You do something kind today. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet thought appears. Good things will come back to you now. That thought feels ancient. It feels universal. But it is not what karma actually means. The word has traveled far from its home. It landed in self-help books. It landed in breakup tweets. It landed in the mouths of people who have never opened a single Sanskrit text. Somewhere along the way, karma became a cosmic vending machine. Put in good deeds, get out good luck. Put in bad deeds, get out bad luck. Simple, satisfying, wrong. So what did karma actually mean to the people who first wrote it down? And why does the real answer say more about the human mind than about the universe? Start with the word itself. Karma comes from the Sanskrit root kri, meaning to do or to act. That's it. At its root, karma just means action, not fate, not punishment, not a scoreboard in the sky. Action. The earliest appearances of the concept show up in the Vedas, composed roughly 3,500 years ago in the northern Indian subcontinent. In those early texts, karma referred mostly to ritual action, the correct performance of sacrifice. Do the ritual right, and the ritual works. Do it wrong, and it doesn't. There was no talk yet of moral bookkeeping across lifetimes. That came later. The idea deepened in the Upanishads, philosophical texts composed centuries after the Vedas. Here karma expanded beyond ritual into ethics. Every action, the texts argued, leaves a trace. Not a divine judgment. A trace? Like a footprint in wet sand? The self that acts is shaped by the accumulation of its own actions, and that shaping continues across cycles of rebirth called samsara. This is where karma starts to resemble something closer to psychological causation than moral punishment. Here is the part most people outside the tradition miss entirely. Karma was never primarily about being rewarded or punished by an external force. There is no karma police. There is no ledger kept by a deity, tallying your sins and virtues like a cosmic accountant. The mechanism is internal. Your actions shape your own mind, your own habits, your own future tendencies. Do something out of anger enough times and you become a person prone to anger. That is karma, not a lightning bolt from above, a pattern etched by repetition. The philosopher and Sanskrit scholar Wendy Doniger, who has spent decades translating and analyzing Hindu texts at the University of Chicago, has pointed out that karma in its classical form is less about cosmic justice and more about the self constructing its own future through the residue of past choices. It's closer to how a habit forms in the brain than how a court delivers a verdict. Now think about why the Western misreading happened in the first place. When karma entered European and American consciousness through colonial-era translations, it collided with a culture already steeped in the idea of divine reward and punishment. Centuries of religious framing had trained Western minds to expect moral bookkeeping, a God who watches, judges, and settles accounts. So when karma arrived, it got poured into a container that was never built for it. The nuance got lost. What remained was the shape people already expected, a universe that keeps score. There's a reason this misreading spread so easily, and it isn't really about India or the West at all. It's about the human brain. In 1965, psychologist Melvin Lerner began a series of experiments that would eventually define what he called the just world hypothesis. Lerner wanted to understand why people, watching someone suffer for no clear reason, would often conclude that the sufferer must have deserved it somehow. In his studies, participants who watched another person receive electric shocks, despite that person's innocence, began to rate the victim as less likable, sometimes even as morally deficient. The mind, faced with senseless suffering, prefers a story where suffering makes sense. It reaches for a reason, any reason. Do you see the shape of that? The human mind doesn't like injustice sitting there unexplained, so it builds a story where the world balances itself. Karma, misunderstood as cosmic payback, fits that story perfectly. Not because it's what karma meant, but because it's what human psychology wanted to hear. The sociologist Max Weber noticed something related nearly a century earlier. In his study of Indian religion, Weber argued that karma functioned less like divine punishment and more like a rational explanation for social position within a worldview that assumed continuity between lives. It wasn't designed to comfort the observer watching someone else's misfortune. It was a framework for understanding one's own trajectory, a way of locating personal responsibility inside a much longer timeline than a single lifetime. That distinction matters more than it seems. A comforting story that explains other people's suffering serves the person doing the explaining. It lets them look away. It lets them believe the world is fair, so they don't have to feel the discomfort of unearned tragedy. But karma, in its original philosophical form, was never meant to explain away someone else's pain. It was meant to turn the lens inward. What are you doing right now? What habits are you building? What version of yourself are your actions constructing, one repetition at a time? Consider the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most influential texts to engage directly with karma. In it, the warrior Arjuna stands frozen on a battlefield, paralyzed by the moral weight of what he's about to do. The god Krishna's response isn't a promise that good actions will be rewarded and bad ones punished. Instead, Krishna teaches the idea of nishkama karma, action performed without attachment to its results. Do the right thing because it is right, not because you're calculating a future payout. The moment you start doing good deeds purely to bank cosmic points, you've missed the entire teaching. You've turned liberation into a transaction. That's almost the exact opposite of how the word gets used today. Karma, in its diluted modern form, is obsessed with results. Someone wrongs you, and you wait, almost gleefully, for karma to strike them down. That desire, understandable as it is, has more in common with revenge fantasy than with the philosophical tradition it borrows its name from. So where does that leave you? Somewhere between an ancient framework about self-shaping action and a modern shorthand for cosmic revenge. The gap between those two things is enormous, and almost nobody stops to notice it. Maybe the real discomfort is this. The original idea doesn't let you off the hook the way the modern version does. Modern karma lets you sit back and wait for the universe to handle your enemies. Ancient karma asks you to look at your own actions, right now, today, and recognize that you are the one building the version of yourself you'll have to live with. There is no vending machine, there is no scoreboard, there is only the accumulation of what you do, repeated until it becomes who you are. You did something kind today. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet thought appeared, that good things will come back to you now. Maybe that thought isn't wrong, but maybe it isn't the universe keeping score, maybe it's just you. Becoming, one action at a time, the kind of person who does that again.